Japan is home to the longest living people on Earth, not by a small margin. The average Japanese woman lives to 87, the average Japanese man to 81. Both figures are among the highest ever recorded in human history. Okinawa, a small island in southern Japan, has more people over 100 years old per capita than anywhere else on the planet. Researchers have studied it for decades. What they found wasn't a secret. It wasn't a supplement or a medication or a genetic anomaly. It was a way of living. Ordinary, daily, unglamorous habits practiced consistently across an entire lifetime. These are 8 of them. 1, they eat until they're 80% full. Okinawans have a phrase they say before every meal, hara hachi bu. It means eat until you are 8 parts full out of 10. Stop before you're satisfied. Stop while you could still eat more. This single practice, maintained across a lifetime, has measurable consequences. Lower caloric intake without dieting, lower rates of obesity, diabetes, and cardiovascular disease, a digestive system that never operates under chronic stress. The West has no equivalent phrase, no equivalent practice. Western portion culture operates on the opposite principle. Finish what's in front of you. Value abundance. Treat fullness as the goal. Hara hachi. Bu isn't about restriction. It's about attention, about maintaining a relationship with hunger that most Western eating culture has completely severed. What to try? Put your utensils down halfway through your next meal. Pause for 2 minutes. Notice whether you're still actually hungry or simply still eating because the food is there. 2, they move constantly but never intensely. Japanese longevity research consistently finds something that surprises Western fitness culture. The longest living Japanese people are not gym members. They don't run marathons. They don't have structured exercise routines in the Western sense. They walk. They garden. They climb stairs. They move through their daily lives in ways that require continuous low-intensity physical activity from morning until evening. This is called NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis, the energy expended in all movement that isn't formal exercise. And Japanese daily life is structured in ways that maximize it. Walkable cities, stairs instead of escalators, gardens that require daily attention, social lives built around physical movement rather than sedentary gathering. The West has separated movement from life. We sit for 8 hours and then exercise for 1. Japan integrated movement into every hour and never needed to separate it. What to try? Count your daily steps before adding any formal exercise. For most Western adults, the number is under 4,000. Japanese adults average over 7,000 through ordinary daily activity alone. The gap is lifestyle, not willpower. 3, their food is medicine before it's food. The traditional Japanese diet isn't designed around pleasure first. It's designed around function, around what the body needs to operate well across decades, not what the palate wants in the moment. Fermented foods at almost every meal, miso, natto, tsukemono, that maintain gut microbiome health in ways Western diets almost entirely neglect. Green tea consumed throughout the day, not as a health supplement, but as the default beverage. Fish several times a week, providing omega-3s at levels most Western diets never approach. Vegetables not as a side dish, but as a primary component of every meal. What's absent is as significant as what's present. Minimal processed food, minimal added sugar, minimal the engineered, hyper-palatable products that dominate Western food environments. Japan doesn't eat well because Japanese people have more self-control. Japan eats well because the food environment, what's available, what's normal, what's cheap and convenient, is structured differently. What to try? Add 1 fermented food to your daily eating. Miso soup takes 3 minutes. The gut microbiome benefits are among the most well documented in nutritional research, and almost no Western diet includes them consistently. 4. They have a reason to get up. Ikigai is perhaps the most discussed Japanese concept in Western wellness culture, and also the most misunderstood. It's usually translated as reason for being or purpose. Western interpretations turn it into a career framework. Find work you love that the world needs and pays you for. That's not what Ikigai means in practice for the people who actually live it. For an 88-year-old woman in Okinawa, Ikigai might be her garden, or the neighborhood children she watches after school, or the meals she prepares for her family every morning. Small, specific, daily. Something that requires you to be present and functioning. Something that would notice your absence. The research on Ikigai and longevity is consistent and significant. People who can articulate a reason to get up, regardless of how humble or unambitious that reason is, live measurably longer than those who cannot. The West has conflated purpose with achievement. Japan understands that purpose can be as small as a garden that needs watering, and that this is enough, more than enough. What to try? Name one thing that genuinely requires your presence today, not your productivity. Your presence, something that would be worse without you specifically. That is your ikigai. Start there. 5. They sleep with the seasons. Japanese sleep culture operates on a principle that modern Western life has almost entirely abandoned. Sleep follows light. Earlier nights and earlier mornings in winter when darkness comes early. Later nights in summer when light extends. Afternoon rest, inemure, not as laziness but as biological acknowledgement that humans have natural energy dips that are better honored than fought. Inemure is particularly interesting to Western eyes. The practice of sleeping briefly in public, on trains, in meetings, at desks, is not stigmatized in Japan. It signals dedication. You are tired because you have been working. Resting briefly allows you to continue. The West treats sleep as a block, one long period at night, nothing else acceptable. Japanese sleep culture treats rest as continuous and responsive to the body's actual signals. Chronic sleep deprivation is one of the most consistent predictors of accelerated aging, cognitive decline, and cardiovascular disease. Japan's more flexible relationship with rest may be one of the least discussed contributors to its longevity statistics. What to try? If you feel a significant energy drop in the early afternoon, close your eyes for 10 to 20 minutes instead of reaching for caffeine. The research on brief rest periods and afternoon cognitive performance is overwhelming, and almost no Western workplace culture has absorbed it. 6. They age in community. Moai is an Okinawan practice with no Western equivalent. A moai is a small group, typically 5 to 8 people, formed in childhood and maintained for life. They meet regularly. They support each other financially in hard times. They share meals and work and the ordinary texture of daily existence across decades. The longest living Okinawans almost universally have a moai. The research on social connection and longevity is among the most robust in all of medicine. Chronic loneliness carries health risks comparable to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Western aging increasingly happens in isolation. Adult friendships decline after the mid-30s. Social infrastructure for older adults is thin. The structures that maintain connection across decades, the moai, the neighborhood associations, the community practices, have largely dissolved. Japan has maintained them, and the evidence of what that maintenance produces is visible in every longevity statistic the country produces. What to try? Identify 3 to 5 people whose company genuinely sustains you. Make contact with each of them this week. Not because it's productive, because humans are not designed to age alone, and every week without meaningful connection is a withdrawal from a biological account that has real consequences. 7. They have a relationship with nature. Shinrin-yoku means forest bathing. Deliberately spending time in natural environments, not hiking, not exercising, simply being present among trees for the documented physiological effects it produces. Japanese researchers have measured those effects extensively. Time in forested environments measurably reduces cortisol, lowers blood pressure, improves immune function, reduces inflammatory markers associated with accelerated aging. Japan has a national program for Shinrin-yoku, designated forest therapy trails, research institutions studying the mechanisms, a cultural understanding that access to natural environments is not a luxury but a health practice. The West has parks. Japan has a philosophy. The average Western adult spends over 90% of their time indoors. The consequences of this on stress levels, on immune function, on the chronic low-grade inflammation that underlies most age-related disease are becoming clearer in research every year. What to try? 30 minutes in a natural environment this week, not as exercise, without your phone, simply present. The physiological response begins within minutes, and the research on minimum effective dose suggests even brief, regular exposure produces measurable benefits. 8. They don't retire from life. In Okinawa, there is no word for retirement in the Western sense. The concept of stopping, of finishing one's contribution, and stepping back from active participation in community and work doesn't translate cleanly into the cultural framework of the longest living people on Earth. Older Okinawans continue working, gardening, teaching, cooking, participating, not because they must, but because their ikigai requires it, because their moai expects them, because the identity of active contributor doesn't have an expiration date in their cultural understanding. Western retirement culture was designed around industrial labor, the idea that bodies wear out and should be relieved of physical burden. What it inadvertently created was a cultural script that tells people their contribution is finished at 65, that the appropriate response to aging is withdrawal. The research on what this does to health and longevity is not ambiguous. Purpose, contribution, and active community participation are not optional additions to a long life. They are biological requirements, for one. Japan never built a cultural script for withdrawal, and the people who never received that script keep showing up. to their gardens, their communities, their families, their reasons to get up in the morning until they can't anymore, which turns out to be much later than anyone in the West expects. 8 habits, but one idea underneath all of them. Longevity in Japan isn't the result of a health regimen. It isn't optimized or supplemented or hacked. It's the natural consequence of a way of living that keeps humans connected to their food, to their bodies, to each other, to nature, to purpose, to the ordinary texture of daily life across an entire lifetime without interruption. The West has been trying to find the longevity secret in laboratories. Japan has been living it in kitchens and gardens and small groups of lifelong friends. It was never a secret. It was always just a way of being in the world. That's it. If this gave you something worth keeping, subscribe. Every week, we look at what Japan does differently and why it works. See you next week.